Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 133 of the Thoughtium Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I am Anthony Ewing, your host, CEO, and co-founder here at Thoughtium, and we are thrilled to be bringing this conversation to you all on a week-to-week basis. Every week, Thursday, 3 o'clock sharp Central, we go live to you all, our community, our clients, our friends, our family, and we bring you leaders with leadership topics that matter most. And we've been doing it now for several years, and the discussion continues to grow. We are so fortunate to be able to have perennial guests come back to the table. One, to share, how they have grown and evolved over time, but also to meet the needs and meet the discussion where it is at. And we have an incredible guest today that we have been so thrilled to have on the show multiple times over the course of the last few years through the pandemic and even before. And that is Tim Jones. Tim is the founder of Leave No Potential on the Table. He is a community organizer, a motivational speaker. He inspires, he brings attention and engagement to what's happening locally and abroad. And today, Tim is going to be sharing with us continued lessons in leadership and life. So for all of you who are interested in not just learning a thing or two, but also how to step into your own confidence as a leader, and particularly as a public speaker, this episode is absolutely for you. So we want to welcome back to the table, Mr. Tim Jones. Tim, thank you so much for joining.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be back. I'm on the family tree. I'm on the Thoughtium family tree. So I'm feeling honored.
Yeah, I always dreamed of like having a platform where it's got such longevity that you have a few folks that just continue to come back. And I think, you're one of the first to really prove that, this platform really does have longevity, because we've had you back now 3 or 4 times, and every time the conversation has been just a little bit different. But there is one thing that remains consistent. We always go back to our childhood at the beginning of the show. Tim and I go way back, all the way back to grade school. That's what connects Tim and I. And I'm sure most of our viewers and our listeners can attest that there are just those folks that inspire you throughout life, whether you are connected or whether you are just following each other from afar. And that's what Tim has been to me, dating all the way back to grade school. Tim, I know particularly, and we're going to introduce some of your work here in a moment, but you've got a real focus on enabling and empowering the youth. So my first question to you today is, well, first of all, how's your heart? How are you doing today?
I feel great. I mean, I work really hard on soul care and making sure my soul is anchored. I'm a man of faith, and so I feel great. My first 20 minutes of every day is spent in prayer, except the weekends. It's not like I think God doesn't take off on the weekends, but Monday through Friday, my first 20 minutes of the day from 5:40 to 6 is in prayer. So I'm anchored.
I love that. Already lessons in life from Tim. And I know that your faith is something that you fall back on. It's also a big part of some of the concepts and ideas and motivation that you bring to today's youth. And I know that most recently you have a real focus on building the strength and the resilience of today's youth. Tell us a little bit about that, and then I've got an interesting follow-up question for you.
Well, I think the core of raising up the now and next generation is to ensure that they're here. And in the city of Chicago, I think in 20 years or less, there won't be a need for AARP in the city of Chicago. AARP is an organization that once you get over 55, they offer you the benefits and rewards of making it through life almost, right? You get in the movies half off, or you get your car insurance slashed down. I tongue in cheek say that to say that our young people, 18 to 34, Black and brown people, are dying every day in the city of Chicago at a rate that will make your head pop. 60% of the homicides in 2022 were in 15 neighborhoods. and they were mostly the now and next generation population. And so my attention these days has been to how do we figure out how to have them here to have a fruitful life, to even have a life to leave no potential on the table. So it's just gotten really serious if it
Mm.
wasn't already.
Yeah. You have an initiative called Bulletproof Youth that we were chatting a little bit about before the show. Tell us a little bit about that. And, with such a, unique prognosis for today's youth, what type of um, inspiration, positivity, or even reality are you bringing in your messaging to today's youth?
I think first and foremost is that, you know, investment is the number one reason why the violence exists in the city of Chicago. And if there is a job desert, no businesses. If there is a food desert, no grocery stores or one grocery store. A fitness desert, no fitness centers. A recreational desert, park districts, YMCA, there will be violence. And there's going to be a lot of violence because there is no investment. And I talked about those 15 or so neighborhoods. Chicago is made up of 77 neighborhoods. 15 or so on a regular basis, 60% or so of the homicides come from these 15 neighborhoods. They all 15 neighborhoods have this one thing in common. None of them have a stock exchange. None of them have a Michelin star restaurant. None of them have an 1871, Wrigley Field, Soldiers Field, whatever they named where the White Sox play at these days. None of them have deep investment in perpetuity. So guess what? There will be violence. There will be this tension that exists in these neighborhoods. And we act like we don't understand what's needed. And I think we act like that because we like to make issues in Black and brown neighborhoods complicated, but it's not complicated. The same desirable and dignified options that existed in Schaumburg where we met are the same desirable and dignified options needed for these 15 or so communities.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, and talk a little bit about you get an opportunity to speak in front of today's youth, and I know that commencement season is coming up. I know that you do a wonderful job bringing in new generations of students as they graduate from high school. How has your message to the youth maybe changed today versus what it was a couple years ago, or maybe how has it not?
Yeah, I think this idea of hope is a real thing. A lot of the stuff that I talk about, that I spend time reading through and investing in, it makes you sad. It makes you tired. It makes you angry. And for me, again, my soul is anchored. I've been able to figure out how to navigate this life the best way that I can. And a lot of these young people haven't. So they've lost hope and they don't feel like getting through the second year of high school. They think there's better options than high school. They think it's better options than the military, than learning a trade. And so my idea or my message to them is this message of hope, this message of leave no potential on the table, this message of reverse suppression, right? Don't suppress who you are. Don't suppress who you believe yourself to be. Work on this exercise in reverse suppression of getting everything in you that you believe is in you out of you. A lot of them want to be clothing designers. I got friends I can connect with you. A lot of them want to be musician and artists. I try to pivot them to the business of music, which is looking like it's going to stand the test of time if we ever experience another pandemic time. You see people investing in music catalog. You want to be in the business of music more than you want to have a microphone in your hand moving people from left to right.
Yeah, just highlighting the sheer opportunity. One of the things that I've gotten a lot closer to over the last few years is how some of our learned behaviors as we were younger show up, particularly as for us as men, as we step into the professional world and we step into new leadership roles. And the topic of mental health, particularly for men, has become a lot more vibrant, and it's become a lot more open. And there are more men that are joining that discussion. Are you experiencing that, and how are you experiencing that?
Man, I've been trying to get men in my life to open up um, for many years now, and trauma makes that hard to do, Anthony. And
Mm,
that's one of the first. There's this wonderful book called "The Body Keeps the Score," and
mhm.
it talks about how trauma affects the body in different ways. For some people, trauma, mothers in Chicago in particular who lost their kids to violence, they lost taste, the ability to taste for months, some women for years. For another person, it's nightmares, it's wetting the bed, whatever it may be. But one of the key things that the book says, or one of the theories that the book says, is if you've experienced trauma, you either remember too much of it or too little of it, which
Mm,
to me says it makes it hard for you to find a middle ground in life if it goes unchecked.
mm,
Therapy, faith, community, whatever. If it goes unchecked, it makes it hard for you to find a middle ground and you become unreasonable.
mm.
And you wonder why that guy is so crabby at work or so crabby on the team or above you in the condo that you live in. There's some unchecked trauma that he hasn't tapped into to help level himself off. But I've always been a proponent of it. It's not something the faith world was really into 20 years ago
Right.
when I came to faith. Um, but as you experience these turns in life, and while you appreciate this vertical um, relationship that you have with God, there's also some horizontal relationships that you got to make with a therapist, with the
Mm,
community. I saw what you posted with the brothers. Your fitness
yeah.
community is now transformed into a mental health. Like there's some horizontal work that you have to do that wasn't necessarily popular 20 years ago when I came to faith.
I love that concept. The horizontal communities versus the vertical communities, maybe those that are a little bit more fixed or traditional or standard or just more bedrocks in our life, like church and family and school. It's the horizontal communities that many of us now have more access to. And I know for a fact that I've been able to tap into these what you call horizontal communities, these adjacent communities that have really opened not just the conversation, but enabled a sense of access or ability to kind of tap into resources in new ways. Um, Tim, you and I go back to grade school, and I remember the group of I say guys, but really we were a group of boys running around at the time, playing football and going to Pizza Hut for all you could eat. I think it was Monday or Tuesday afternoon, and I always like to go back there with you. But I'll tell you, I've been thinking more and more about childhood recently, and how that has inevitably impacted all of us, our experiences back then. And I'm wondering, Tim, we ran around in the same group. If you today could stand in front of our group of friends, back in the early 90s, what would be the one piece of advice or message that you would give us at 12, 13, 14 years of age?
Well, first of all, I would have to get them to recognize that this is Tim Jones talking to them. They wouldn't believe that, that this is who I turned into. I still get it today, whether I'm in Schaumburg or Inglewood, where I
Right.
came from to Schaumburg and then moved back to Inglewood. I would say, look, this is me. This is your boy. I tackled you. I pushed you against the tree when you were running and you thought you were going to score. Remember that guy? I'm the same guy. But this idea, man, we had no idea about seasons then.
Mm,
We just thought that we would always be in the backyard, in the snow, in the summer month. We just thought we would stay high. And life don't work like that, man. Life is really cyclical. Life is filled with bumps, turns, and get comfortable with seasons. I tell young people with this all the time. There's going to be high highs and low lows. And don't you throw away those thermals just because summer decided to drift into October.
Yeah.
Winter is coming.
Yeah.
And because we didn't know, man. We just these rites of passages. That's all I can remember. Like
Mm-hmm.
we leave in junior high and we go into high school together.
Mm-hmm.
We get 16, somebody get in the car and we're gonna get in one of their cars and we just
Yep.
thought that these rites of passage were these just linear path that we were on. And life don't work like that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I would completely agree with you on the seasons, and the earlier you can accept and acknowledge that life is full of different seasons and you never really do arrive. The healthier you can kind of approach your day to day. And you bring up a really good point. When we're young, we see these rites of passages and we all feel entitled to all of them, right? It's almost a travesty if we get our license late, or maybe we miss college graduation. These are all things that are just planned for us. It's inevitable. And I think as you get older, you start to realize that not everything is inevitable. Not everything is a right. And there are certain things that you do have to struggle through. There are certain hopes and dreams that don't come true, or maybe are taken from you. And that's a rude awakening, but at the same time, that can be an incredible invitation for you to get to know yourself, how to cope, how to manage seasons, how to build that vertical and that horizontal line of communities to support you. It's interesting when I'm in a room of younger leaders today, particularly in their 20s. One of the differences that I see in younger leaders, in the energy of younger leaders, and I'm sure I had it more than anybody, was a little bit of this frantic nature around needing to kind of arrive at the next stop, right? You graduate college and you enter the work world, and these rites of passages are no longer clearly defined. So you're almost kind of like struggling to find, like, what is that next rite of passage? Is it the big promotion? Is it starting your own business? Is it, buying the house out in the suburbs? And there's a little bit of urgency, if not a little bit of, frantic nature around this. And there is such an opportunity for us, particularly in our 20s and 30s, to really pause and understand that we are right where we need to be. And I know that that's a message that you tout. And I'm curious if that's something that you see in the youth, and is that something that you're able to kind of address and help them see?
Well, I think that's just the overconfidence that comes with youth. Is
Mm.
that this idea that I got to get to it now, that I have to get to it by this point in life, this age. I have to be in this zip code. I have to have this salary, and I think it's just the natural. Uh, it's attributed to youth and just novice and greenness, but I always challenge them not to rush. You're gonna get tired. Not to chase, not to force. You're gonna get weak, um, because this is a lifelong journey. I think you mentioned that when you were talking about piggybacking my point about seasons. And I always tell them, don't rush, don't chase, don't force. And I no matter how smart I am, how much I read, I still always come back to sports analogies and the kickoff. And that guy catching the kickoff, it's coming right to him. He's not going backwards and he's not going forward. It's coming right to him. And if it don't, it's not for him. And that's what I tell the youth. Like, it's coming right to you. And if it comes too far up, it's not for you. If it goes over your head, it's not for you. You're looking for what's coming right to you. And now this doesn't absolve you from development, from partnering, from building yourself, but this keeps you from rushing, chasing, and forcing, which is a natural
Mm-hmm.
tendency to once you have these expectations for things to be done by 32 or 35,
Mm-hmm.
or,
Mm-hmm.
or I wanted to be an associate by this time. I want to be partner by this time. Don't chase, don't force, don't rush.
Yeah. that goes along with, Tim, one of the qualities of yours that I think is so indistinguishable, which is your consistency. That's something that if someone were to ask, tell me a little bit about Tim Jones and what you know about him, the first thing that would come to mind, and the first thing that I would say is that you're the most consistent guy in the game. Like, I've never seen somebody with such consistency. And it almost seems like, Tim, you rely on that consistency as a way to remind yourself that, you're right on schedule, to remind yourself to not push and to not force, right? You've got kind of this process about the way that you engage with your community, the way you put content out there, the way that you navigate business and life. And does that process help you stay anchored? Does that process allow you to, not get ahead of yourself or not skip a season?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. As we talked earlier about my first 20 minutes of the day are spent in prayer. The next whatever is spent in getting that thought out to persuade one person to do one thing, right? And that's what I gave up on. I recently gave up on this idea of reaching everyone. I think we put too much pressure on reaching everyone, and I'm tired of it. I got tired of it, so I'm going to figure out how to persuade one person to do one thing, and it's a part of my anchoring. It's just who I am. It's built in, not bolted on, and that's why I'm not intimidated when I enter rooms, or if I see something that's good or hear somebody that's good, I don't be like, dang, he got me. He's edging me out, because I have my position. I'm anchored in who I am and what I'm called to do, and it's no longer, again, something that comes along with our youth too, is this idea of comparison. And comparison feeds self-doubt. It doesn't quench it. So yeah, it's really part of my anchoring. Consistency is core to my brand board or mood board, whatever you guys do when you take people through those exercises.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's not just part of your brand. I mean, it's the way that you show up. And I know this, but don't take for granted just how much people count on that consistency. For me personally, I count on you showing up every weekend with the word of the day. That's something that if it wasn't there, there would almost be, that's a part of my horizontal approach to tapping in. And you've got that consistency, and I think it's very rare. And I want to thank you for that. That's something that the entire team here really appreciates. We also know, Tim, that you are a leader, not just in the community, but also a leader in the business world. And I'm curious, here we are, 2023. You and I first started talking on this show back in 2020. And I'm curious, over the course of the last few years, as you think about talking to today's business leaders, maybe what are some of those topics that you're excited about or that you're focused on, or what conversation is bubbling up today that's unique to today in business versus a year or two ago?
Yeah, I think we all know what we all experienced a few years ago. The pandemic basically put a search engine light on everybody's forehead, where, before 2022, if you're scrolling mindlessly on social media like me every day, you'd be like, Anthony, he's on another island. Amanda she got a place in Florida too. And it was really hard to see who was taking losses, because social media is this highlight reel and this scoreboard. But what 2020 revealed to us is that we are all battling. We are all in intensive care. And since the workforce is a microcosm of the world that we live in, guess where those people are coming, who they're clocking into, whether it's remote or in person. Now you have to have the tools to deal with those folks. So how can you be strong with your return to work policy, but gentle with people? Because you got to consider they're battling. They lost a mom during the pandemic. their brother's still in the hospital. So how can you be strong with the truth and gentle with people as a result? And also, once people get back, how do you make them feel heard um, as a result of being distant from the workplace, right? A certain portion came back, they didn't. They could feel a way. How do you make sure they don't feel shamed, shaded, or shunned? And so, this idea of uh, caring for people, intensive care, this idea of really caring about their story, and we all have different stories, but the most important thing to do is to make sure that we don't hurt people when we tell our story after they tell their story, or vice versa. So I just think that the human capital, just the the importance of it was raised as a result of what we experienced a few years ago. It was always important, but it was something that we still put profits before. We still put brand awareness
Mhm.
before. Now I now I believe it's time to really usher in and take care of the most important asset that the company has.
Mhm. Yeah,
The
couldn't
people.
agree more. Go ahead.
Yeah, the people, right? Because it's
Yeah.
never personal. It's always personnel, and you and Norm understand that. All right, well, I'm going to make the exception, or I'm going to make it the rule, because it's not personal, it's personnel. And I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of companies who have gotten this return to work stuff right, these people who are really looking at AI right now and trying to get it right, those are the people who understand that it's not personal, it's personnel. How do I take care of my people as a result of, of what's going on in the world around us?
Yeah. Yeah, if the last few years were all about, continuity and supporting people where they're at, I think we are thick in the discussion about what this is going to look like moving forward. People um, rightfully are coming forward with their own requirements, and organizations are able to speak more clearly with what they need. I think it's actually a really healthy place right now, between employers and their communities, or their humans that make up the company. The discussion is unfiltered, and it involves very real requirements that people have. And I've seen leaders in organizations more willing to truly listen and understand than they ever have been before. And we still have a long way to go, but the lines have been blurred, and I think that's been a very positive byproduct of the pandemic. Um,
Yeah.
Tim, I want to make sure that we've got a little bit of room for a quick lightning round at the end of our discussion here today. Are you ready to dive in?
I don't know what you're gonna hear with a lightning round, so you could get something that'll get you kicked off at the FCC.
Yeah, right. That's all right. Yeah, I don't have the pause button here, but I want you to answer them. I want you to answer them confidently and authentically. Uh, so the first one, I don't know if I've ever asked you this, and I feel like I know the answer, but MJ or LeBron?
Oh, come on, man! I'm from the South Side of
Okay.
Chicago. I watched every championship. I remember I celebrated when we beat Portland with a gallon of water. I was throwing it in the air in the kitchen as if it was champagne or something. This is Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I was out on Crystal Court South with pots and pans, banging pots and pans. I mean, you could hear it. You could literally hear it. At the same time, I keep having discussions today about how just impressed I am with the way that LeBron is like managing his legacy in a world that is like far more dynamic and far more difficult. Um, I'm just impressed with the way that he's showing up. What are your thoughts?
I mean, he is an example of
Yeah,
friendship, of fatherhood, a
yeah.
bit like he's a businessman. He clearly understands who he is and the route that he wants to carve. I don't know if you've ever seen the video of him being interviewed in high school, and they ask him what are your future plans, and the guy couldn't even get the question out of to get to the NBA, and he just
Hmm.
stopped. That and that
Hmm.
was his goal. He knew that was the vehicle to putting your boys on, to building a legacy for family, to building a legacy for Akron. I think the way that he thinks about Akron is the way that I think about Chicago. I think the way that he thinks about his friends is the way that I think about my friends. And so whenever I had that conversation about the two, it's never about what LeBron is lacking. It's just about what MJ meant to me as a Chicagoan.
Yeah.
During that time, I was there.
Yep. I'm so thankful that, we were, I was 14, 15, 16 when MJ was winning championships, and we were at the prime of our basketball careers, and we were in the middle of the city that he was doing it in. I mean, we were so fortunate. I just think so fondly upon those like 10 or so years. Next question. You could speak in front of a single audience. What would that audience be? And what would you talk about?
It's got to be Ted, man. I don't see a lot. I go to just, I work and listen to Ted. I work and listen to YouTube or whoever I want to listen to. And I don't get a chance to listen to a lot of brothers. And so Ted is the ultimate stage for me. I would probably talk about Bulletproof Youth, this idea of getting about 40,000 youth that live in those high school students that live in those 15 or so neighborhoods outfitted with bulletproof vests so that they can walk and go to school and go to work and get home safely. One of my peers calls it a stopgap until somebody smarter than me comes up with an idea to get guns off the street or to stop young people from dying on their way home from school. So I just decided that as crazy as this sounds, I would like for those young people to have bulletproof vests. And that's where the idea of Bulletproof Youth comes from. It'd be about $2.5 million to do it. And I don't believe leadership or politicians have a will to do it. So I'll do it through a GoFundMe. It may sound crazy, but we've seen it done before when there were public health challenges in our community. We all had a basket full of condoms on our college room floor next to the RA's room. Right now, they're putting Narcan in clubs in the West Loop and River North for people who are overdosing on opioids. When else have we seen it? I talked about contraceptives, seat belts. It's a public health crisis in Black and brown neighborhoods across the country.
That in a TED Talk would be potent. So I'm manifesting that for you.
Thank you.
For sure. It will happen. It will happen. So you're a speaker, you're a leader, you're a community organizer, but maybe on top of all of those, you would say that you're a dad. You've got 3 little ones at home. And I'm curious, you've got to appoint each of your 3 children a title in a large enterprise. You've got CEO, you've got CFO, and you've got the head of sales. Which title goes to who and why?
Well, you've been watching the series finale of Succession, and or at
So
least
good.
the series in itself is so good. Kagan his name means 5. That's my oldest. She'll be 13 in September. Her name means small, fiery, passionate thinker. Her middle name is Amor, which means love. So she's a thinker who loves. She would definitely be my salesperson. She can sell ketchup popsicles to a nurse in white gloves. So she would definitely be my salesperson. And this is not any male gender type things. He would be my CEO because he runs the house as the youngest right now. And then Cambridge, we named her after 2 of the best universities in the world, Cambridge, Massachusetts, and Cambridge, UK. And her middle name is Asha, which means hope in Swahili. So she's a scholar who hopes. So she'll be my CFO. She'll figure out the math in the DCF spreadsheet and all that stuff.
Yep.
So they all work.
That's great. And you're just along for the ride, right? You'd be like the IT guy or something.
IT guy. Put me on the board, give me my shares.
Right. I love that. Well, Tim, it's been just an absolute pleasure to have you back on the show. I'll say it again. I've said it earlier today, and I'll always say it. You are truly one of the more consistent forces that we have, not just in the Navigating Now community, but in our extended community. You bring light and energy and passion to the conversation, and on behalf of my entire team, we just love being able to tap into you, and we so appreciate your time and your insights today.
Whatever you ask me to do, I'll do it. I shared this the last time I was on, but Anthony was a goalkeeper and a back catcher or catcher in high school. And again, these are positions that sit back and see the whole field in front of them and give direction. And 20 some years later, he's doing the same thing. And I just appreciate him for inviting me in. I love what you do. I appreciate the kinship and the brotherhood, man.
Thank you. I appreciate the kinship and the brotherhood as well too. You know, go find somebody that you can grow and evolve alongside in life, and you can find ways to kind of connect throughout life to to remind each other what life is all about. And that is what I would call you in my life, Tim. So thank you so much. We look forward to having you on again soon.
I appreciate it. Love your thought, Tim. Have a good one.
Love you too, brother. Thank you. All right. So we want to thank everybody for joining this episode 133. This was another incredible episode with our friend, our community leader, Tim Jones. And this will not be the last time that we've got him on the show. We go live every Thursday at 3:00 Central. We want to thank our YouTube community, our LinkedIn folks who tune in via the LinkedIn stream. And any others who are watching this down the road. You can find all of our episodes at thoughttium.com/live. You can also look at what to expect next week. We will be here 3:00 on Thursday. We hope everybody has a good rest of the week. We'll see you all next week.